Hi everyone, my name is Arthur Aguirre and I want to welcome you to Lead 4350 Leadership and Social Change. I'll be your instructor for this semester. I love teaching this class. I love finding new ways of connecting the textbook with what we discuss. I'm excited to get into that with you all. This first video is purely an introduction to the course. I know a lot of folks, you have a ton of stuff going on, but I hope that you watch the video so that way you know exactly what the expectations and the requirements for the course are, so that way you can succeed in this course. If at any point in the semester you have questions, please don't hesitate to email me. My email is on this presentation. It's also in the syllabus, so you can email me and I can get in contact with you, or we can figure out a time to hop on Zoom so we can answer whatever questions you might have. So here is all my information. For this semester, my office hours are going to be completely online. It'll be on Wednesdays from 12 to 2 p.m. There is a link in Blackboard that you can use to access the room. I may step away from my desk from time to time, so please, be patient in case you try to log in and it takes a few minutes before I let you into the meeting. If you have questions, please use my email. Don't use the messaging function in Blackboard. It's just a lot easier for me to respond, and it'll be a lot faster for me to respond that way as well. In terms of the required materials, there's only two things that you need. You need this textbook, Leadership for a Better World, and you need an Apple TV Plus subscription. The way that I like teaching my courses, whether it's my undergraduate courses or my graduate courses, is I like using either a TV show or a movie to link the concepts from the textbook and find a tangible way of connecting them to something else, and I like using TV shows and movies. This semester we'll be using one that's exclusively on Apple TV Plus. Our class is really only like 7 weeks and a day. If you want to wait and try to just binge it all in 1 month, so you only have to pay for a 1-month subscription, then I would encourage you to do that. You hopefully already have the textbook. You can kind of glimpse through it, see what you want to connect in the readings, and just kind of binge through the entire series and find what you're going to make connections to, so that way you only have to pay for 1 month. I don't want you to have to pay for any more than you need to. I'll get into the specific show a little bit later. Everything we're going to be doing is going to be here on Blackboard. I expect full participation. It's going to be a very quick block. I'm sure you've been in these kinds of classes before, and it can go by pretty quickly, but I still need you to, in order to do well in the course, you need to be participating to the full extent. In terms of the different concepts we're going to be covering, there's going to be a lot of diversity of thought when it comes to the discussion posts and the responses. So just make sure you're respecting everybody, and when you have a disagreement, that it's a disagreement on ideas and it doesn't turn into online trolling that you can see in other platforms. If you need any ADA accessibility, please reach out to CAS and they'll reach out to me so we can give you the necessary accommodations. Late assignments, I do whatever I can not to accept late assignments. I do understand life happens, so as long as you try to communicate with me as quickly as possible, we can try to come up with some sort of solution. In terms of grade appeals, I try to be as quick in terms of getting your grades back to you. If you have an issue, it's 24/7, so you got to wait 24 hours before you start yelling at me, and then you come in and reach out to me within 7 days, so that way we can kind of get it squared away as quickly as possible. In terms of ethics and academic dishonesty, I try to make myself available to you as much as I can. Like I said, I have those online office hours because I know for some folks it's just not feasible to get to campus at a particular time in the middle of the day. If my office hours don't work for you, email me and we can find another time to meet. That said, I don't want you to ever feel like you have to do something that is ethically or academically dishonest, whether it's plagiarism, whether it is using AI for your assignments. I want to see you making an effort. So in terms of my expectations for work, I want to be able to see that you're doing the readings, that you're making the connections, because in leadership courses, it can be pretty easy for some folks to think that they can just kind of casually and broadly talk about leadership in some of their assignments, and it'll satisfy the requirements. But I am looking for direct connections to the textbook, to the very specific concepts that we're covering. So that's what I'm looking for your assignments. I try to keep things as simple as I can in terms of what the assignments are and what the requirements are. So if you ever need help, if you ever feel like you're a little bit lost, please reach out to me. That way I know you're struggling and we can get you on the same page. So these are the 3 assignments, and really it kind of boils down to 2 of them, and I'll explain. We have a weekly reflection, and there's going to be 5 of those. So anytime that we have a paper due, you do not have a weekly reflection. You can see all this in the syllabus. It does get a little bit, it's a little bit different for the last week because it's 7 weeks in a day. You do have a weekly reflection due for week 7, and then you'll have your paper due, a couple days afterwards. So that's the only exception to the rule. You have your leadership synthesis, and actually let me do this individually. So this is what your weekly reflection is going to look like. Again, it needs to be clear that you've done the readings for the course, right? It doesn't mean that all of them have to have something directly from the book in terms of these 3 questions, but when I read your initial response, your initial post on your weekly reflection, it needs to be clear that you've been doing the readings. If you want to include a quote from the book to better support your response, then I would encourage you to do that. You don't have to, but that's what I'm looking for is you being able to answer these questions and making it clear that you've done the reading. So the way it works is you will respond to one class. You respond to these questions for your initial post, and then you need to respond at least twice. Now you could respond to 2 different students, or let's say you and one of your classmates get into a really good discussion and you respond twice in one post. That'll work too, as long as I see 2 well thought out posts. It can't just be a 1-sentence response for your weekly reflection discussion board. So you need to have a good solid initial post, and then you need to have 2 responses in that same week. In terms of your leadership synthesis, right, the reason why I'm asking you to get the Apple TV Plus subscription is because we'll be looking at season 1 of Ted Lasso. Only season 1. But for your leadership synthesis, I want you to think about it like this. If you have ever tried to explain a concept or an idea or try to make sense of something, even I think I like the best example I can give is if you were trying to explain something to a kid, you usually have to use some sort of item or concept or show to help them understand some of the more complex ideas. You're doing the exact same thing here. So for example, I sometimes have lessons on nonverbal communication. If I was doing a leadership synthesis on nonverbal communication, I would talk a little bit about what nonverbal communication is, what are some of the basic parts of it, and then I could choose a show like The Office, or I could choose a movie, I don't know, and whatever movie you can think of, and I would pull some aspects of good and or bad nonverbal communication from that TV show or from that movie to make sense of what I just talked about in terms of nonverbal communication. You're doing the exact same thing. So you're going to have 2 of these assignments. For synthesis number 1, you can choose anything from chapters 1 to 6, but I would encourage you all to focus on chapters 3 through 6, which are the first 4 parts of the social change model of leadership. Then you're going to do the exact same thing for synthesis 2, but from there you have the options of choosing anything from chapter 7 to 10, which is the second parts of, or the next 4 parts of the social change model of leadership. And then that leads to your final paper. But basically your final paper is the big, huge assignment for the entire course. You're doing the exact same thing that I'm asking you to do for this leadership synthesis, where you are getting the social change model of leadership and explaining it using Ted Lasso. That said, let's see, you can include your first 2 synthesis assignments into your final paper. So what that means is you wrote 1 to 2 pages for synthesis number 1, you wrote 1 to 2 pages for synthesis number 2. You put those together. Now you don't just want to just paste them together and easy peasy, but you can include some of the core components of those, and you already have up to 4 pages already done, and you really just need to add a couple more pages to your final paper. So if you think about that long term in terms of what you want to do for your final paper, that could make what you write for your synthesis number 1 and synthesis number 2 a little bit more clear. Because if you know what the final product's going to look like, you can kind of write your final paper in segments, if that makes sense. You need 2 to 3 references for this final paper, but You already have two of them because you'll be using the textbook, and then you have to cite Ted Lasso. So you could just leave it at that, or if you want to have a third reference, you can do that. It needs to be an APA format. If there's another format you prefer, just let me know. I just need to be able to see that you're using some type of a format. And essentially, I just want you to be able to show your knowledge of that social change model and be able to apply it to the show Ted Lasso. So that's all of your assignments for the semester. Like I said, it's going to go by pretty quick. If you have questions, if something about these assignments isn't clear to you, please let me know. I know some folks who haven't taken classes with me before sometimes get a little tripped up with the two synthesis papers and the final paper. So I would be happy to make that clear. I will most likely also make another video, specifically one for the synthesis papers and then one for the final paper, so you know exactly what's going on. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, I'm really excited to be teaching this class, and I'm here for whatever you need.